First overall pick was Anthony Davis. So clearly the best player in this draft. He went to Kentucky, drafted by the then New Orleans Hornets. And of course, he's now currently on the Mavericks. So who did you pick first overall for the, again, then New Orleans Hornets?
Yeah, it's Anthony Davis. I think he's probably the best player in this, easily the best player in the draft. Maybe it's close between the next two, three guys. But I mean, he has quite the resume, and he was clearly the best pick here. 10-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. I think 4 times first team, 1 time second team. So he's 5-time All-NBA defensive team. He's career averages of 24/7, 10.7 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks. Clearly, one of the most talented players here, especially when he's healthy. One of the most talented players in the NBA when healthy. And he got his ring right with the Lakers during that COVID run. So, I mean, not a real ring, but we'll still count it as a ring for him.
I was going to say that's a topic for a different podcast. I went with Anthony Davis as well. It's kind of a no-brainer. The crazy thing about him is that you can say that despite all the accolades, it's possible you could say he's underachieved in his career because of the injuries and some of the other things. The long stretch in New Orleans where they didn't have much success. I don't think they won a playoff series the whole time there. Maybe one playoff series, I believe. They beat the Blazers in the first round at some point before the demanded a trade to LA. But as much as I hate to admit it, he is probably the best two-way big man in the NBA. He's incredibly frustrating to play against, and I'm sure, or to root against. And I'm sure he's probably pretty frustrating to root for at times because he does have those games where he disappears. He does have those niggling injuries, and he's always seems to come out of the game, even if he's not seriously injured. He'll come out for a few minutes, then come back in. So, is it crazy to say that he's underachieved in his career?
No, I don't think so. I think he definitely could have done more, right? But he was stuck on some bad teams for a while, and then I mean, to only have one ring for him to show, and that during a COVID year, like especially with that stacked Lakers teams that they've had, like I definitely say he's kind of somewhat underachieved. Like he should have more rings for sure, and he should have like definitely more All NBA first teams, things like that. So definitely, I think he's sort of underachieved here.
Yeah, I need to fact check this, but I wonder how many he would still have. How many like first teams and awards he'd still have if that 75 game threshold was still in place, because there was a lot of years where he didn't reach that, but doesn't really matter. We can always double check it. But
Yeah.
he clear first overall pick, and now he gets to play with Cooper Flag next year. So that's going to be a fun team next season. Two Kentucky Wildcats went back to back. So after their national championship win, so I should have mentioned that was one of the big reasons that Anthony Davis did go number one, was because he did lead the Wildcats to a national championship, one of the most hyped prospects in a long time. So second overall, Michael Kidd Gilchrist went to the then Charlotte Bobcats. Again, out of Kentucky, small forward, drafted by the Bobcats, and is currently retired. Who did you have going number two here?
I went Damian Lillard. Definitely debated maybe Draymond here or Bradley Beal here. But I know the Bobcats had just drafted Kemba, but you can't pass on a future Hall of Famer like Damian Lillard, right? Damian Lillard like was easily. You can, okay, all right, we'll find out your pick here. But yeah, I mean, come on, man. Dame is 9-time All Star, 7-time All NBA. I think one time he was first team, couple of years second team, couple of times third team. So clearly, there's 7 year stretch where he's a top 15 player in the league. Um, and he's a killer scorer, 25 points per game, 6.7 assists per game. These are kind of his career averages. Even 4.3 rebounds per game and 1 steal per game. So those are his career averages. I think he just kind of moves the needle a bit more for the Bobcats than Kemba Walker would have. And you could have traded Kemba Walker. You could have taken Damian Lillard, traded Kemba Walker for another piece, right? So I think Damian Lillard would have been the pick here for me. I think he's the second best player in this draft.
I don't disagree. I agree he is the second best player in this draft. I do think I was trying to go with like a dose of realism here, that you just used a top pick on Kemba Walker, who was lights out in college, clutch player. He was on Dame time in his own way, where he led UConn to the national championship as well. And it just didn't make sense to me that they would go back to back on two really small guards. Kemba is 6 foot if you're being generous. Dame is listed at 6'2" again if you're being generous. He's probably more like 6'1", maybe 6 foot flat. So I just think a backcourt with those two guys would be dynamite offensively, but they're just getting rolled on every play. There's no defensive resistance whatsoever. So that was the only reason I was like, it's too soon for them to move on from Kemba. So, and especially because he showed promise his rookie year, and he ended up being a pretty good player for the Hornets or the Bobcats, whatever you want to call them. After for the time that he was there. So for that reason, I went with Draymond. I think he makes sense there. This is an organization that is still a losing organization. They don't have much of an identity. And no matter what you think of Draymond as a player, he is a culture changer and he's a culture setter. And I think we've gotten to this point in his career after, 10 plus years where he's in this weird place where he's like overrated when he's being used against the Steph Curry legacy argument, but he's also being underrated with, by fans, and they just don't really see the value that he brings to the team, which a lot of it is the intangibles and things that don't necessarily translate to the box score. So what do you think of my Draymond pick here?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I thought Draymond is a closely the third best player. Him and Dame are pretty close, neck and neck. Like you could make an argument that Draymond might even be the second best, but definitely the third best player in this draft. And if you're looking at it from a fit perspective, yeah, like makes more sense to go Draymond.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's enough to turn around a pretty poor excuse for a franchise, but it just, again, from a fit perspective, from a culture perspective, I mean, Dame is a culture changer too, don't get me wrong, but I think just from an on court perspective, you're like, let me just go with Draymond and beef up the defense and build up this team. All right, the next pick here was Bradley Beal, a shooting guard out of Florida, who's drafted third overall by the Washington Wizards, and he is currently on the Suns, though I don't think he's going to be on the Suns for much longer. We'll see how that goes. So who did you have the Wizards picking third here?
Yeah, I had them going Draymond here, right? Draymond, second round pick, really outplays that draft pick. He's easily one of the best defenders in the game, right? Four-time NBA champ, four-time All-Star. He's got two All NBAs. I think one second team, one third team. He's was Defensive Player of the Year in 2017. Nine-time All Defensive Team. Five of those were first team, four of those second teams. He led the league in steals in 2017 when he won Defensive Player of the Year. But if you look at his scoring, he's below double digits for his career averages. But I mean, he makes it up, right? He's like almost 7 rebounds a game, almost 6 assists a game, 1.3 steals, 1 block. So I thought, you get Draymond here. The Wizards also have John Wall. So I wouldn't think, someone like Damian Lillard makes sense here on the Wizards. And maybe talk yourself staying with the pick, going Bradley Beal, but Draymond is clearly much better than Bradley Beal. He brings something to the table that the Wizards were severely lacking. A defensive
Mm-hmm.
minded player. So I mean, the fit's there, I think, with John Wall, and they just have to add a shooter around those two, and then they would have had a pretty good team, I think.
Yeah, for the same reasons that I think you said it was okay that or you wouldn't have gone with Damian Lillard here. I should say because of John Wall. I thought it would have been okay. I thought it would have been a better fit than Dame and Kemba, who are again two really small guards. John Wall is like 6'4". He's not a huge point guard, but he's on the bigger side for a point guard. So I mean, we saw Portland. They had good success with Dame and CJ in the backcourt. CJ is not as small as Kemba, so I think it would have worked out. Bradley Beal obviously is a bigger player than Damian Lillard. Still not really known for his defense or anything like that. So I couldn't pass up Dame. I skipped over him in Charlotte. Didn't think he made sense there, but I think he would have made sense in Washington. I think they would have had a similar level of success. Like the John Wall, Bradley Beal era was known for like making the 6 seed, 7 seed always. They had one playoff series win, I think, in their tenure there. And I think it's gotten to the point with Bradley Beal where he's also become underrated. I think he's just not a good player anymore, but it's making people forget this long resume of being, 20, 25 points a game scorer and all that. And the dude's a bucket. And he, maybe not anymore, but he was. But I think Damian Lillard would have been able to step into those same shoes. Pretty dynamic offensive backcourt with him and John Wall. Probably would have been a lot of fun. Not a title contender by any means, not a culture changer by any means, but it would have been a lot of fun to watch. So we kind of swapped picks here, but what do you think the ceiling is? Like, does it change having Dame over Bradley Beal on this team?
I think it kind of does because just because of how good Dame was. Like I know Beal was a bucket getter, but you could kind of interchange like John Wall and Damian Lillard, right? Like what I think the problem would have been shooting because John Wall can't shoot, and that the reason why I worked in Portland was because CJ McCollum could shoot, and they could he could play off ball. He wasn't really on ball point guard type, but John Wall was also very ball dominant. So I think it might not have worked out too well for John Wall's career, but what was his career? He didn't last too long, right? So he had too many
Maybe would have
injuries to
taken
start
some of the
piling up.
miles off of him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe take some miles off him, and then maybe John Wall turns into more of a defender. Like he had the skill set to be a defender, he just never tried. So yeah, maybe. I think it could have worked. I think it could have worked because John Wall could have been. They both could have been the ball handlers, and John Wall could have defended the shooting guards, and Dame could have been on the point guards.
Yeah, I don't buy this whole there's only one ball thing anymore. I think it's been disproven a million times where we're like, oh, there's not enough, not enough possessions. There's only one ball. What are they going to do? They said that with KD. They said that with, any big trade where you get even like Chris Paul when he went to the Rockets. We're like, oh, James Harden's pretty ball dominant. And they were a game away from making the finals and maybe a Chris Paul hamstring away from making the finals. So I don't buy any of that. And I think that it would have worked out pretty well. But again, what the ceiling is probably close to what it was with Bradley Beal, but it still would have been fun to watch.